Wow, that was ugly. Louisville marched into Death Valley and treated Clemson like just another team and treated Death Valley like just another place to play. Unlike their first 8 trips in the series, in which Clemson has dominated this series since 2014 when Louisville joined the ACC. It was about to happen sometime, and it happened with a thud on Saturday night. Talking Clemson football, of course. We got Jason Priester here from the Clemson Insider right here at the Voice of College Football. Jason, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, man. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. I spent about 3 hours watching this football game on Saturday night, and my
You,
goodness, that was
you
a
wasted
shellacking. I know it didn't look like it on the scoreboard, but Louisville had complete control of that game.
you wasted about 3 hours of your time Saturday,
I did.
man. That was a disaster of epic proportions. You don't see, you typically you don't see Clemson just get flat out beat in all three phases, and they just flat out got whipped, outplayed, outcoached, outclassed. You named it. They just it was a little surprising. If you'd have told me Louisville was going to win, no, I wouldn't have been all that shocked. But if you told me they were going to win in that fashion and that Clemson team was going to show up and look so unprepared and so outclassed, I'm not sure I would have bought that. Louisville just they won the battle at the point of attack on both sides of the lines of scrimmage. Clemson's defensive line, it was so undisciplined, act like they've never seen a cut block a day in their life. Um, it gets a little. It's almost comical at times watching those guys over pursue and take bad angles. It's kind of been a recurring theme, a big part of the season. And when Peter Woods goes out, it really gets magnified because there is nobody behind him that can fill that void and play run defense at end for Clemson. There's just no depth. You saw him try Cade Denoff, AJ Hoffler. They even ran out Armand Mason out there. He's a guy that's a former walk-on. Dabo really likes him, but I mean, he's a former walk-on. They even tried him out there after Peter Woods left. Nobody could get the edge set. All you got to do is run a little stretch play, and it's probably going for big yardage. And it's hard to watch sometimes.
Jason, I was giving this defense a lot of slack based on all these blowout games where they would score 1,000,000 points in the first half. They'd be up by a 500,000. And, the NC State game comes to mind, Virginia, all down the line, Stanford, whomever it was that was putting up points in the fourth quarter, big deal. Of course, it didn't matter at that point. They're putting in the twos and the threes, number one. That's a big part of it. And also that the game didn't matter at that point. But with the game on the line. And again, Louisville was not marching down the field and putting up explosive plays over and over and over, but they were just controlling, like you said, both sides of the line of scrimmage. That is what was shocking is that and we'll stick to the Clemson defense and the Louisville offense. They could have made it a much, if they would have converted in the red zone, then it could have really gotten out of hand early, but they just kept tacking on field goals. And again, the Clemson defense, I gave it the benefit of the doubt, but did not come through on Saturday.
No, it's like I mentioned a minute ago. Once Peter Woods goes out, it's a whole different deal.
Hmm.
And don't get me wrong, they've not been great at all times with him in there, but when he's out, it's ball game. It's like they can't stop the run at all. Teams will routinely attack the side opposite of TJ Parker, or they'll throw a double team at him. Clemson's got, they've got Parker and Woods, and let's face it, Woods is more of a tackle than an end, but he's been serviceable out there. And he missed a couple of games earlier in the season where Clemson just got gashed on the ground. He comes back, is fixed for a few games. He goes back out. He goes back out early Saturday night, and once again they just start getting gashed. Not saying it would have changed the outcome or anything, but it's a different defense when he's not in there. Matter of fact, one of the reporters at the press conference today, I couldn't tell who it was because I usually don't go to Dabo's pressers on Tuesdays. I asked Dabo, did he regret not going to the portal and getting a defensive end to help provide some depth over there at that position this year. And obviously he said, no, we love our roster and stuff. You don't never know when somebody's going to get hurt, but you got to prepare for what somebody might get hurt. I mean, maybe they thought a guy like AJ Hoffler was going to be further along than he is. But I mean, once you get past him, I mean, you already know what you have in Cade Denoff. You probably know Darian Mayo is going to redshirt and not going to help you this year. Once you're already so thin at end, you've got to move a tackle out before the season even starts. It's and now that he's been hurt twice, you see just how paper thin they are. To me, it was a massive mistake not going and grabbing a end out of the portal in the offseason. I've talked about it a few times, and it is really coming back to haunt them right now.
What was alarming to me, Jason, is that Louisville's a decent team, no question about that. But they had lost 3 games, and I know that they were 1-score games. But I saw a lot of that action. They lost to Notre Dame by a touchdown, but they were gifted all sorts of points from Notre Dame, and they had to score a touchdown late that was meaningless to get it to a touchdown. Miami ran them all over the field for 52 points. The same thing with SMU. Even though they stayed within a score, SMU was always in the lead, always. And even during this drop-off for Clemson, not even going back to the heyday, going back the last 3-4 years, unless maybe they were playing Florida State at their best, every time Clemson State was on the field against an ACC team, they always looked like the better team. And maybe, again, it was a slow grind. It wasn't like in the heyday when they would just blow people away. But you had confidence that, I'm watching Clemson take on a mid or even higher tiered team in the ACC, an NC State or a Louisville. But they're going to win this game by 10 to 17 to 20 points eventually because they're just better, and I can see it. Louisville looked like the better team. They looked like the team with the more talent. They looked like the more physically imposing team.
Oh, I don't disagree. Like I said, Clemson got just outclassed in all 3 phases. Heck, even Aiden Swanson looked like he forgot how to punt Saturday night. Those were not the first 2 field goals Clemson's had blocked this season. That's number 4. They had 2 blocked against Florida State earlier in the year. And guess what? That's right where Peter Wood sits in the protection. It's another deficiency when he comes out of the game. You don't have any answers. You could always bank on, even last year, year before that, when this offense was just extremely hard to watch and not very good. You could bank on that defense keeping them pretty much in most games and maybe even winning some for you. It has fallen off a cliff this year. It baffles me when you're getting gashed on the ground like that, how you just keep wanting to run the same 4-2-5 look over and over and over and over. The definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expect a different result. You got that 5-star freshman sitting on the bench, Sammy Brown, a linebacker who's rarely played against, once you get into this Power 4 competition, he's not played very much except when they go to a 3-linebacker set, which has been very rarely. You're getting gashed in the running game. Your DBs aren't that bad, particularly on one side with Terrell. Lake Lucas isn't terrible on the other side. You got a pretty good safety in Mickens. You got Khalil Barnes out there who's good at the nickel. You got some issues at the other safety spot. But your pass protection, your pass defense is better than your run defense. Why not go with the more traditional 4-3 look? Run Sammy Brown out there and let him fly around and make some plays instead of continuously watching that defense just get gashed on the ground. I don't understand. I get it. Wes loves the 4-2-5, but when it's not working and you're losing guys to injury, like Clemson lost 2 defensive linemen and a DB the other night in that game, and when you lose 2 of your best defensive linemen, and you're still getting gashed that way. I don't know. You got to try something else, and they never really did. And it'll be interesting to see if anything changes from here out, because Dabo basically called Wes out, not by name, but he said it a couple of times since the loss the other night that we got too much talent on defense to be this bad against the run. And I would tend to agree. It's what we saw Saturday night from a run defense standpoint was flat out unacceptable.
And Jason, you mentioned the two defensive players, and then there was also the cornerback that went to the locker room right before halftime.
Shelton Lewis, he's probably out for the year.
Okay. So what's the status of the rest of these guys? Do you know?
Capehart, the other defensive lineman that went out, he's out this week. Dabo said today he's probably going to be out a while. Peter Woods, he said, was that day-to-day. I'm not even sure what's wrong with him. He looked fine on the field after the game. We'll see if he goes this week. But that's kind of Dabo's go-to when a guy, is questionable for the upcoming game. He always the day-to-day is what he says every time. And if it's a guy that he knows is going to be out a week or two, you'll call it week to week. But he did say today K-Pop was probably going to be out a little bit.
We've got Jason Priester on the line. Of course, we always enjoy the conversation with Jason each and every week on Clemson football. You can catch Jason's work at the Clemson Insider. Please like the video and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. Now we switch to the offensive side, and we'll go right to the line of scrimmage. You brought it up already, and it seemed like every time it was third or fourth and short, they'd run into a wall and just had no push on those plays in particular. And this could have been said a number of plays, but there's one that comes to mind that was when you say some things were almost comical, just like those blocked kicks. Not for Clemson fans, but if you're just watching college football, those were almost comical, especially the second one, just because there's a decision to be made there. Obviously, they're trailing. Do you go for the touchdown? And based on the math, there was a thought that you probably should go for the touchdown. They're at like the 7-yard line on a 4th and 6, I think, and then they have the kick blocked and they stay down 3 scores. But in regards to the offensive line, there was a play where the Louisville tackle just shoved somebody in Kate Klubnik's back and then just reached over him and just kind of sacked him with the offensive lineman kind of sandwiched between them.
That was Tristan Lee, the left tackle.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
He was a big recruit.
Just bull. He was a 5-star. Just bull rushed him back, caught him on his heels. But that was probably the worst. That effort from that offensive line Saturday night was the worst of the season, even counting the Georgia game. A lot of those yards Phil Moffitt got, and he had a lot of yards in the second half. He was still breaking through some, running through some stuff, running through some contact at the line, at or near the line of scrimmage. And Louisville was that defensive front was starting to wear down a little bit in the second half too. But there was not much. There was in that first half, there was just nowhere to run. They were not opening up any running lanes, getting no push. Louisville, it was almost like sometimes they were expecting what was coming. They had to, to run blitz on, and it was on at the right time. How many 3rd and 1s or 3rd and less than 2s did Phil Moffitt not pick up the first down? A 4th and 1, I remember off the top of my head. He just, there was nowhere to go, and he ends up getting tripped up by one of his own men in the backfield who's laying on his back. It was just a disaster. And then, as good as those freshman wide receivers have been this year, both those guys started Saturday night and the outside spots. And there were a lot of one-on-one matchups for them in that first half, and they didn't hardly win any of them. They got out physical. They got manhandled a little bit. And then when Louisville started running some more too high safety looks, Clemson acts like they'd never seen it before. It was just they didn't know what to do to respond. It was to me, it was a breakdown on all levels, from coaches to players. I don't know if guys in that building have been reading too many of their own press clippings, or they thought they were just gonna go in there and get a win, but they looked totally unprepared. And I'm not accusing anybody of a lack of effort. Don't misunderstand. But when you don't prepare the right way, a lot of times the result is what we saw Saturday night. This is 3 years in a row. Clemson's, or especially Clemson's defense has gotten manhandled coming out of a bye week. 2022, we saw it up there in South Bend against Notre Dame. Last year down in Miami, they give up more than, I think it was more than 200 yards on the ground. And this time it came at home. This is the first time Clemson's lost at home coming off a bye week in their last 50. I think they had won 15 in a row at home coming off a bye, if I'm not mistaken. Asked Dabo about, if the bye week might have sapped their momentum or anything. He wasn't buying any of that, man. He wasn't having any of that. But it is definitely, it was a head scratcher for sure, man, because it's just, they just got thorough. It was a thorough beatdown. Thorough.